to Settlement Nation podcast. I am your host, Courtney Barber, and today we are bringing you a show that is going to push you past your limits and teach you how to become better in business, life, and getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. Here with me, I have Jason Van Camp. He's a real-life action hero, and he's also what we call an overachiever. He's one of those really annoying, super nice people that has basically done everything in life, and I'm sure there's much more that he hasn't done that he's going to get checked off his list. So a little bit of background about Jason. He is a decorated Green Beret, having graduated from West Point. He also volunteered to attend U.S. Army Ranger School, where he earned his Ranger tab in 2002. In 2003, Jason was deployed with the 101st Airborne Division in the invasion of Iraq. He began serving as a detachment commander with the 10th Special Forces Group, leading his team on close to 300 combat missions to kill and capture high-value targets. Jason has won numerous awards, notably the Bronze Star with a V Device for Valor, as well as 2 additional Bronze Stars during his numerous combat rotations. In his spare time, Jason also founded Mission 60, a leadership consulting firm comprised of Medal of Honor recipients, U.S. Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, and other special operations team members. He is also the founder and executive director of Warrior Rising, which empowers U.S. veterans and their immediate families by providing them with opportunities to create sustainable businesses. And so far, over 3,000 veterans have applied for the program, which is really cool. He is a Wall Street Journal, Amazon, and USA Today bestselling author of his book, Deliberate Discomfort. And we are going to discuss some of the concepts from that today. So welcome, Jason.
Courtney, thanks for having me. Jacob, great to be here. This is going to be an exciting episode. And this is, I'm very grateful and appreciative of you guys. Thank you.
And we also do have Jacob here, everyone. Not to be disappointed, we have to give Jacob his intro as well. He is a Settlement Nation regular. He's the national managing partner of Trial Lawyers for Justice and runs Trial by Human Training Academy. He's a seasoned trial lawyer out of Wyoming and has years of business experience himself, having been part of over 10 startups, including one financed by the legendary oil tycoon T. Boone Pickens, in which he served as president and CEO. Jacob is on the advisory board of Warrior Rising, which is where these guys met. So welcome, Jacob.
Thank you. We've basically eaten up this episode so far with Jason's
I know.
resume.
Too long.
Not
Jacob's
even
a real hero.
To the whole thing. But that's great. It's always good to be hanging out with veterans after service, and so it's an easy thing to do when you have that in common. So we always start with that commonality, and then it goes from there. So good to be here today.
So Jason, before we begin, I want you just to give a little bit of background on your book, Deliberate Discomfort. And it's not just a book, it's also a challenge as well. But we're going to focus on that today. And I want you to give kind of like, if you can, a summary of what it's about.
Absolutely. So I wrote Deliberate Discomfort and published it in 2020, just weeks before the pandemic hit. So you're talking about an appropriate title, Deliberate Discomfort. It was perfect timing for what we were going through as a world, not just as a country. And, it became a bestseller. And I was really excited about that. And really what it is, it's a book about my life, my experiences immediately after I earned my Green Beret and reported to my company for the first time. So I reported to my new unit and I meet my company commander, my boss, for the first time. And he says, Jason, we're deploying to combat. And in order for you to not only survive, but thrive, these are the things that I need you to learn. These are the things I need you to understand. And so he had me speak to certain people in my organization to find out what they believed in, what made them tick, why they were special, and how they made decisions and so forth. And so the book is comprised of 3 sections in each chapter. One is sort of my experience meeting a new individual, learning from them. The second section is the science behind it, the so what and the now what behind what I'm learning. And then the third section, each chapter, is the practical application. And so that's how we took these lessons and applied them to our clients at Mission 60. And, I hope people will get a chance to read it, either, buy it on Amazon or listen to it on Audible and find something valuable from it.
Well, look, there's something else to understand as we look at this today. And I think it's important because the average size of the plaintiff's law firm across the country, I talk about this a lot, is only 2.5 people. And of course, then the largest in the whole world is about 850 people. And there's a whole lot of stuff on the low end. There's not a lot of stuff in the middle, but Jason's background, and I think what I would like to talk to today is kind of that road. And it didn't start at the Green Beret, and it certainly didn't start in the Army, and it started earlier than that. Anyone that gets an academy appointment, it starts earlier. You don't just one day, in March of your senior year, decide you want to go to an academy. And not only did Jason go to the academy, but he played football for the academy. And not only did he join the Army, I don't think a lot of people know and appreciate, you don't get to go straight to be a Green Beret. Officers must start with another career field first, and it could be anything. And Jason started as an artilleryman, and then so he's been learning lessons that I want to talk about and I want to tie into. And I know, Jason, that the book might start, when you show up to your first duty assignment, but there's a whole lot that goes into there. And I think what an observation I have of lawyers out there, lawyers typically have zero business background. Lawyers that are focused on trying to run a law firm is not always, something that comes naturally. They know the law, and some have learned how to practice law, and some hang a shingle from day one. But my gosh, it'd be great if we could tie in some of the lessons and talk a little bit about deliberate discomfort and how you see those lessons go over. Because the reason your background is important is it's not all military. Not only that, after you got out as a major, you've got to peer into a whole lot of different people's inner workings, because you advise businesses, you advise business leaders. And not only that, all these veterans that we're talking about, you get to see people with some really great business ideas, and you get to see people that might have a great business idea, but maybe don't even have a clue on how to run a company or grow a company. So maybe if we could, as we start to talk about that, this battlefield to the business world idea and this other, would you be willing to talk about this thing that you talk about in your book about turning pain into an advantage? Because there's different kinds of pain. You've experienced all the different kinds, I think, mental pain, physical pain. Could you maybe bridge some of the gaps that the most of the listeners that don't have military experience could help, and we'll kind of walk through some of this?
Oh, for sure. So I appreciate that. And there was a lot to unpack, going back to my childhood, my upbringing and everything. And so I just want to touch on that briefly. I grew up in Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C. So it was a good mix of suburbs and the woods and, the big city. So I got to experience all those things. It was a very diverse area. And so, my best friends growing up were one guy from Afghanistan, another guy from Laos, another guy, African-American, and one guy from, Indiana. So it was a good diverse group, my best friends. And my mother and my father were instrumental in kind of showing me how to work hard and showing me how to choose hard things before hard things choose me. Because hard times, hard things, they're going to come either way. You don't have a choice in the matter. They're coming. And so you might as well be proactive, and you might as well say to yourself, listen, I'm going to make myself stronger and tougher by doing things that are uncomfortable for me. Another thing my mother told me was, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. So whoever I was hanging out with, where I was spending my time, that's who I would become eventually.
And I don't mean to interrupt, but this is interesting. My mom always said, you're known by the company you keep. And it sounds like it's a similar principle. I want you to keep going though, but I didn't understand that principle, because some of the ones my mom was trying to get me away from were the fun ones, but keep talking.
Trying to keep you away from those girls, I bet. Yeah.
Oh, I
Jason,
didn't know
we're
how
not
to
going to
talk
talk
to
about the
them.
girls.
I didn't even know how to talk to them. It was the guys that like to stay out a little bit later than average.
Yeah, no, it's true. That's true. You know, what we say now is show me your network and I'll show you your net worth. You know, so it all comes full circle, you know. And I talk about this with all my clients, specifically the professional athletes. It's like, listen, if you're going to hang around your buddies that are drug dealers, you know, eventually you're going to become one. And you see that sometimes where multi-million-dollar athletes are caught, you know, being drug traffickers or something stupid like that. You know, so that's sort of some things that my mother, specifically my parents, taught me when I was younger, and how that ties into like turning pain into an advantage. Um, Growing up, played a lot of sports, right? And when you're young, that's sort of where you learn to push your boundaries, learn to push your comfort zone, and to do hard things, to make those sprints, to do the conditioning drills, to go to the weight room, and that sort of thing. And so I enjoyed finding out how hard I could push myself. I enjoyed pushing myself further and faster than other people. And I prided myself in that. You know, we talk about being a hard worker, right? And sometimes people will say, I'm the hardest worker in the room. Well, here's my question. Are you? Are you the hardest worker? Or are you just working on and doing things that you like doing? You know what I mean? Because if you're saying you're a hard worker, well, then that's great. You're really good at lifting weights or sprinting. But when you're in the classroom, you don't give two craps about your math assignment because you're just not interested in that. Are you working hard? Not really. You know, try to identify. To me, it was all about identifying things that I didn't like doing, that I wasn't good at, and trying to be better at that.
Jason, in your book, which I was reading out all these lines to Jacob, and at one point he said, "Can you just not read out every single line and say this is the best line of the book?" So I had to really, condense it down to a few things.
Well, I've read the book.
I know you have, Jacob. It was your book.
You only made it a couple pages before there's like 60 lines.
I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you.
Well, you know, what really resonated with me was a section that was spoken about called embracing the suck. And I want you to talk a little bit about that as we do this sort of correlation between the battlefield to the business world, because I know a lot of people, they like to avoid everything that's hard. You know, if there's something sucky out there, they don't want to do it. They want to take all the shortcuts, but then they wonder why they're not getting the results that they think they deserve. So can you talk a little bit about where that saying comes from and then how it applied to you?
Yeah, that's something that we talk about a lot in our society. But when I first heard it, and it was during a military training, I'd never heard it before. Pain is just weakness leaving the body. You know, when someone first said that to me, I was like, oh my gosh, that's one of the coolest, toughest, hardest things I've ever heard in my life. And now you hear it a lot. People say it a lot. So it's a common term. And to me, it was said when we at Ranger School, trying to become a Ranger. And it was something that we volunteered to do. And we didn't have to be there. We had the autonomy to choose to continue, put one foot in front of the next, or to leave, right? And it was really an amazing feeling to know that the only reason I was there is because I wanted to be there, I chose to be there, and that sort of thing. And they try to break you, you know, and they always try to break you initially with stress overload, physical stress overload. And there's a reason why they do that, because it's the best discriminator when assessing an individual or team's willingness and capacity to perform, to do hard things. And so they start out really hard, and you'll see people start to quit. You'll find out who can take it and who can't take it. And once you start, you're like, well, I'm already here. I might as well give it the best, give it my best shot, do the best I can on this thing. And what's interesting is after about 30 minutes, of this intense physical training, when you're holding the log over your head, or you're doing sprints, or you're doing a million push-ups or sit-ups or whatever it might be, your true personality comes out. You find out who you really are. You find out if you're a complainer, if you're a coward, if you're weak, if you're a cheater, if you're clever, if you're, tough. And the things that they say,
find that out too.
A team player, exactly. If you're a team player, and the things that you learn, the things they tell you is it's not going to get any easier. It's only going to get harder. So you might as well accept it. Not only accept it, but embrace it. Welcome it as an old friend. Give that suck a big hug, and say thank you for being here because you're making me better.
Jason, I want to go on that a little bit because you may not believe what I'm about to tell you.
Okay.
But I think you can take a lot of decently motivated people in our society today and put them in a random day of Ranger School, random day of Special Forces School, you name it. It could be pararescue, combat control, recon, SEALs, whatever. And a lot of motivated people can make it through a day. But when you look at the folks that make it through, we have these same challenges right in the business world. You could throw somebody into a Wall Street boardroom. You could throw them into a Fortune 500 company, whether it's a leadership position or anything. And I think they can do a day. But what might you be able to tell a business person out there in this analogy that I think a lot of people could make a day, but a lot of people can't make 10 weeks, or a lot of people can't make, the beginning to the end. And what do you see as the correlation between not only getting the Ranger tab, but the long tab as well? Are there some commonalities that you saw that you think you're seeing in the business world about that kind of getting up the next day? Just this idea that I only have to make it through one day, and that's today.
Man, that is a great question. And I'll tell you this. You can't just look at a person and say, they're going to graduate from Ranger School. They're going to be a Green Beret. I don't know anybody who's really good at that, because you would see some of the biggest physical studs or the guys with the best resume. Like, oh man, this guy's a genius level Harvard grad, went to Oxford, and he just quit, and then you're thinking, man, if he quit, then what can I do? So you can't just look at a guy or look at a resume and say they're going to be successful. As we go through these courses, right, there's two things that come to mind. One is, what have you done in your past that's been difficult? What have you overcome? What adversity have you overcome? How resilient are you? And that's going to be a good indicator or predictor of how far you're going to go. Because you're right, it's a battle of attrition. You could stick anybody, and I agree with you, in Ranger School or in the Q course, wherever, for one day, and they could probably do it. They could will themselves or tough it out, but could they do it for 10 weeks? Could they do it for 2 years? No, probably not. And I'll tell you why, is because not only is your past, your experience, a good predictor of your future success, but also you got to understand what's your reason for being there? What's your purpose? Why are you here? And I talk about that in the book. Like, that's the first question that we talk about in chapter 2. Why are you here? And if you don't have a good answer for that, you're not going to be able to sustain that for very long, because it's just not going to make sense to you, and you're not going to care.
Well, Jason, I want to, if I could, interrupt right there, because that why question applies across the board. For the trial lawyers that are listening, or whoever might be listening, why did you even choose to be doing what you're doing today? Why are you on the team that you're on today? Why did you start your own practice, or why are you working for the person you're working for that gets you to go every day? And what difference might you be making in that organization that you're in? And I love the why question. And I actually love what I do. But what we don't have that you had is military training, whether it's the Q course and all the subparts of these things, or the different ways that you're tested, or it could even be a school. You might, I had a friend that made it through the pararescue indoctrination, but failed scuba school, that wasn't comfortable in the water, even though he became comfortable in the water. But there's something about the open water that's different than the prep. So the business world doesn't have a course that takes you beginning to end. And we're very lucky, I think, in many ways to have those. because there's a lot of stuff about the military I'm happy to leave behind, but how do you get somebody that doesn't have a path, a course, a leader, a way to get from point A to point B, and how can you talk to them about really driving on the why when there's not a path that's quite the same?
To me, it's about the people you surround yourself with. Is that show me your friends, show me your future. Because when I was asked that question, and you can read about it in chapter 2, I said, when I was younger, I remember going to my grandmother's house for Christmas, and my dad and all of his brothers, my uncles, were sitting around telling stories, and they're drinking and laughing and having a good time. And each story was more entertaining, was funnier than the last, and they were kind of one upping each other. And I was kind of sitting in the corner. I wasn't even at the table, and I was just impressed. And I was kind of like, man, that's a good story, that's funny, and I wanted to participate. I wanted to engage. I wanted to be a part of this conversation, but I couldn't. I had no stories. I had nothing to bring to the table. Nothing. And so when I was at a young age, when I was there, I said to myself, one day I'm gonna have more stories than all you guys. And that was sort of my driver for a lot of my life. Like, Jason, by doing this, will this turn into an interesting or fun story? Will it? Okay, yes, I'm going to do it. And most times it would put me in really ridiculous situations, And also, like, if something really terrible happened to me, it'd always be a funny story to somebody else. Like, people enjoy, your misery or your misfortune. And that, to me, that was a positive thing if something bad happened to me, because I would say, oh, that would be a good story for my friends or whatever. And as I grew older, I realized that this was sort of an immature way of thinking. And in chapter 2, it's sort of like, listen, I'm not here to collect stories anymore. I'm here for the person to my left and to my right. I'm here to make them better. I'm here for the team. I'm a leader now. I'm not just a part of this team. I'm leading this team. I'm commanding this team. I have to step up. My motivation cannot be collecting stories here. And so, Jacob, to answer your question, who do you surround yourself with? Who are the people to your left and to your right? And you can also have those people be mentors for you. Like, hey, I'm not good at this. Jacob actually crushed this. He's an expert. This guy knows more about this subject than anybody. Jacob, could you coach me up? Could you mentor me, man? And you can't be a mentor without being a tormentor. So you have to make it hard. You have to make it tough, and for me to learn. Or else it's not gonna stick. There's no stickiness there.
Well, Jason, but there's going to be kind of a natural, thing that comes out more in the business world than in the teams, and the teams, not only special forces. It could be a team of police. It could be a team of cooks at the dining facility, and everybody's a team. But what about when you encounter the person that either works for themselves or has one employee, and this idea that, Jason, you're really lucky. You were part of, the biggest military team in the nation. What about me? It's I'm a lawyer and I have one paralegal, and I'm just trying to make a difference in the world. How do you get mentored that way?
I love that. That's a great question too. So here's how I look at it. And this, Jacob, in the military, you're on a team, right? And you're out. You're working for each other in the country and everything else. But at the same time, you're also trying to be the best in the unit. You're trying to be number one. You're trying to be the guy that gets promoted first. You're trying to be the guy who gets the best jobs, the best missions, the best everything. And I've seen guys in our community that understand that, and they're like, listen, I'm only out for number one. Like, I'm not going to help Jason, because if I help him, then that's sort of screwing me over, right? And you find out pretty quickly that those guys never last, ever. And so I said to myself, no matter what, even if it potentially could hurt my chances of being promoted or being ranked or whatever, I'm going to be a good dude. And what that means is, I'm not going to know everybody, and everybody's not going to know me, but they're probably going to hear about me. They're probably going to hear about Jason Van Camp. And when somebody says, hey, question like this, hey, what do you know about that Van Camp guy? Oh, yeah. He's a good dude. Like, as long as I got that stamp of approval from somebody, that credibility, like, I'm solid. And so in the business world, specifically in the nonprofit world, where we have Warrior Rising, where we help veterans start their own businesses. And really excited about that. There are, I guess, 45,000 veteran service organizations out there. It's crazy. And some of them are competitors, right? And we're all vying for money. We're all vying for donations, right? And some of these nonprofits are like, screw you. We're going to steal your donors. We're going to, not going to work with you and so forth. And we even invited one nonprofit to one of our fundraisers, and their representatives were walking around saying, "Oh, Warrior Rising, whatever, you should donate to us instead." And it's kind of like, well, get the hell out of here. You know what I mean? Like, are you serious? Like, this is ridiculous. And so for me, I'm like, I want to be a good dude in the nonprofit world as well. I'm going to share the wealth. I'm going to reach out to some of these organizations that are trying to help veterans, some of them trying to help veterans start businesses. And when I do, they're like, you know what, Warrior Rising, they're pretty good. Ben Camps, he's a pretty good dude. He shared some experience with me, some information with me. He even shared some of his donors. I'm going to try to do the same thing to him at some point. Well, hopefully they say that. A lot of them do. And if they don't, then it's a tough loss, but at least you tried. And so that's how I look at it with your example with the legal situation is, you're all lawyers, you're potentially trying to do a job together, but also at the same time you're competing against each other. Be a good dude. Reach out to each other. See if you can help each other out in some capacity, because they'll come full circle eventually.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to bring up, in both a military example from recent and exactly what you tied on. So one of my friend's husband's on the SEAL teams, and I asked her, his goal is to get to 6, and if he's going to try and get to the green team. And she's like, no one will tell him what to do. There's people are not sharing the path. And I think the path. You're friends with Rob O'Neill. Rob O'Neill says what the path is. But right now in his unit, nobody's doing it because they want that path. Now in the lawyer world, people think, well, if I go get mentored, or if I share this case, or if I do too much, then I'm basically losing money instead of gaining the great benefit of either being mentored or sharing money. And most often in our world, if you bring someone else in that knows stuff you don't know, together you make more sharing the same pot of money than if this idea of, I better keep it. This is my best case. And I think this is my retirement case, so I better not ask for help. And that mentality is just a killer, but it's the person's mentality that's exercising it, right? Like this openness to just ask questions, just be kind of a little bit more vulnerable. I think in the military terms, you do want to get promoted if it has to come to someone to get promoted, it's about pay and all these things you're talking about. And I think it's your perspective on just maybe letting some of that go or being willing to do it. You probably end up in the same position anyway, don't you think?
Or even better. We all get it. We understand it. It's fearful, right? I'm afraid if I do this, that I'm going to lose everything. If you confront that fear and you take that leap, right? I think not. I don't want to promise anybody, because it doesn't happen all the time, but more oftentimes than not, you'll end up being more successful, being more wealthy by taking that leap, confronting that fear, and reaching out, being confident in your vulnerability, and honestly, learning to trust somebody. Believing that I can trust this person, and then establishing that relationship with actionable trust building activities so you can build trust between the two of you.
No, I was just going to say really quickly, it's really interesting, Jason, that you bring that up, because even from this podcast, some of the guests that we've had, they're some of the most well-known, respected, with highest verdicts trial lawyers. And one thing that everyone says about these people is they are the nicest people that will take any call from any lawyer at any time to help them with their case. Also correlates to the fact that they have the biggest verdicts and are the most revered out of all. So it shows that when you actually help others, especially up and coming people who you don't see everyone as a threat. They share their knowledge. They come on the podcast. It's free. We don't pay anyone to come on it. They have to give us their time. But everyone always says, oh, John Romano, the nicest guy in the industry. Nick Rowley gives his time to anyone, is always out there helping. So it's nice to hear that you feel the same way and that you've seen that in your life circumstances as well.
Totally. Who do you remember, right? Who do you remember? Who do you admire? You admire those people. Are you admiring or talking about the person that is the most wealthy? No, you're talking about the people that made you feel a certain way. That you respect in that way. Like they're reaching out, they're going above and beyond. They're helping me become better, and I'm not paying them to do it. There's no benefit that he's receiving, but he or she's going out of their way to help me. You guys have a podcast. I mean, this is amazing. You're helping them. You're going out of your way to serve other people, and you're being selfish about being selfless. So I admire that.
That's great, Jason. You said the word trust, and I want to bring it up because and I don't know why. It's resurfaced again, and a lot of people attribute Ronald Reagan to the quote. He's not the original quoter, but it doesn't matter because I think we should all be able to reuse good quotes, and probably a decent amount of people make up the same one without knowing it. But this whole idea of trust but verify, I try until you start out with 100% with me, and I think that does maybe come from the military, like. And you had to assume when you got to the team, the person on your left and right did the same things you did, went through the same things you did. And you got to start there, in my opinion. Some people make you earn trust. I like the idea of trust but verify because you're going to start with 100 and you can only lose it, to me. How do you look at, and what does trust but verify mean to you?
Yeah, man. So here's what I'll say to that. When I graduated from West Point, all the cadets, me especially, we would ask officers or NCOs like, hey, what advice do you have to a brand new second lieutenant going into the Army for the first time? And you'd get some good advice. And one piece of advice you would hear again and again and again, and that was trust your NCOs. NCOs meaning non-commissioned officers, right? Your right-hand guys, the guys that are actually doing all the work, right? And when I went to, and you read about this in chapter 1 of my book, when I went to talk to my boss for the first time, he's like, how's that worked out for you so far, Jason? And I'd been in the Army for about 5 years up to that point. And, I had to answer him honestly. I'm like, well, not as well as I'd hoped. And he said, Jason, there are good NCOs and bad NCOs in the Army, just like there are good officers and bad officers, right? Unfortunately, you're going to find the same is true in the Special Forces. There are good NCOs and bad NCOs. And my advice to you is this: don't trust your NCOs. And when he said this, I was like shocked. I was like, this goes against everything I've heard my entire military career. Don't trust your NCOs? Like, what are you talking about? I said, I'm going to need some clarification on that, sir. And he said, listen, trust but verify. Belief is given, but trust is earned. Right. So I thought about that. And then he said, Jason, why would you blindly follow someone just because they have, a military rank, 3 chevrons and a couple of rockers on their insignia, right? He's like, this is ludicrous. Don't trust someone because they have a sergeant in front of the name. You're in the Special Forces now. You have to think on a deeper level, right? Your NCOs need to earn your trust just as you need to earn theirs, right? It goes both ways. At some point, you're going to trust, let's say, Sergeant Jakob, Norman, because you know him as a person and he has proven himself to you and he's earned that trust. And vice versa. Only after you trust him as a person can you truly begin to trust Jakob as Sergeant Norman, right? But in order to begin that process, you need to take a risk. You need to take that leap of faith. You need to confront that fear. You need to do something very difficult. You need to believe in that person. And that's where you give that 100%. I 100% believe you. Now let's earn that trust together. And so that was just sort of like such a powerful epiphany type moment for me where, looking back at my career, I had NCOs that would say that I would go to combat with and I'd want him by my side. Like, this guy is the dude I want in the trench with me every single day. But then when we go back to garrison, when we redeploy, I could not trust this dude to not get a DUI. I could not trust this dude to not beat his wife. I couldn't. He did it every single time, and he'd be thrown in jail. Vice versa. There are guys in garrison, NCOs, that I would hand over my logbook to. They'd handle all the finances. They do the sensitive items report. We'd never lose a piece of equipment. Amazing. But then when we go to combat, This dude is so afraid of getting into a firefight. He's hiding behind the trench, not firing his weapon the entire time. I couldn't trust him. And so you have to really get to know the person first and find out what can you trust them with. I'll give you another example in business. You know Ken Venera, he's my chief of staff. I give him any task, he'll get it knocked out in 10 seconds, and he'll do a pretty good job of it. But I can't trust him to not be emotional. Like, he is an emotional guy. And so when he gets triggered emotionally, whether it's by me or a client or a partner or something, I can't trust him to not lash out, right? And so I know that about him. So I don't put him in situations like that, or at least I try not to. And so that's, I think, where that belief can transition to trust, and sort of taking the time to get to know the person all comes into play.
Jason, we have covered so far just the tip of the iceberg of topics. And I've already decided if you'll come back, there's going to be, many, many parts to this, but I kind of want to end this with good. I mean, I'm happy. This is so good so far.
This went so quick. I'm sorry. We didn't get to any.
No, but we still have 2 really good questions left for today. And the one that I want to ask is about making mistakes. I always say to people in different businesses that I've had, I don't mind if you make a mistake by trying something new, by taking a big risk. And if it fails, at least you tried something. But in your book, what I really liked, and I want you to talk about it, is people making negligent mistakes, which is not okay, especially in the law. You can make a mistake by representing a client it's a really hard case and maybe you don't win, but at least you had to go. It's not okay to be missing a bunch of deadlines and other stuff that you should be on top on. Can you give us some examples from sort of what this means, how you came up with it for the book, and maybe in your own world, how this came about for you?
Oh, no question. So Major Pettit told me this, and he's a stud. This guy, or I guess he's now Colonel retired Pettit. He's a legend in our community. You talk about it in chapter 1, right? And he said, mistakes are okay. He wanted me to know that, because he didn't want me to feel like I had to walk on eggshells, or this is a mistake-free organization. So he let me know right off the bat, hey, mistakes are okay here, but they have to be aggressive mistakes, right? And that's something that I remember learning when I was playing sports growing up. Like, my coaches would tell me, hey, it's okay to make aggressive mistakes. You're trying hard, right? And Major Pettit told me sometimes the mistakes show me as your boss that you're willing to take risks. And it's going to impress me more if you're willing to stretch out and do that. And I can't run an organization, this is Major Pettit talking, that doesn't allow mistakes. I'm going to be lenient with you, and I want you to be lenient with your men as well, right? So I can't be lenient with you and then you come down hard on your guys. That's not going to work. He said all mistakes are not equal. Your actions, intentions will be judged not only by me, but also your men, your team. They're going to be looking hard at you. I need you to avoid mistakes like being unprepared, focusing on personal gain, or anything with malintent behind it. I'm not going to tolerate any sloppy mistakes. You're being negligent. You're going too fast. You're lazy, or you're stupid. I'm going to let these mistakes lapse if you're focusing on 3 things. 1, fighting. 2, surviving. And 3, winning in this environment. So if you focus on those 3 things, I'll be tolerant. I'll lenient.
And that's great, Jason. I guess I'll ask the last question because really, if we've only talked about chapter 1, this is a great reason to talk again. But in the business world, most of the business world, and I know there's probably some analogous arguments, it's not about the Army's mission, which is the easiest mission in the world, right? It's to fight and win our nation's wars. There's not always life and death involved, and especially there's just a lot of business. It's not about life and death, but you still got to inspire people. And, going off the things that you're doing, even the last 3 points that you made, have you converted that to the business world? Or when it's not just about living or dying, what's the business analogy to that? And it could be surviving and thriving and other things, but what do you have on that?
I like how you use the word inspiration. And first off, you're right. We're talking about life and death in the military, right? And we're not talking about that in sports or business. some, law enforcement, that sort of thing. You are, and so I don't want anyone to mistake that, the level of intensity is the same. It's not, and we understand it. We can still learn lessons from combat, from the military, from the special forces that we can apply to business. That business, that battlefield to boardroom sort of mindset. And going back to the inspiration comment, I work with a lot of professional athletes, and a lot of them will come to me and say, Jason, I just want you to motivate me. Just motivate me, man. And I'm like, I'm not gonna, and I'm not even gonna try. And they're like, what are you talking about? Isn't that what you do? And I'm like, no, it's not what I do. And I'm like, the only true motivation is self-motivation. I can't get you up in the morning. I'm not your alarm clock. I can't get you out of bed and take you to the gym. I can't force you to eat right. I can't do any of those things because I'm not going to be there 24/7. And I'm not going to try. What I can do is I can inspire you. That's the only thing I can do. I can inspire you. I can plant a seed within you so that you can motivate yourself. And if you motivate yourself, you're going to take action. You're going to do something. Maybe it's something small. Maybe it's something big. It doesn't matter because you're going to take something. You're going to take some form of action. And when you take that action, you're going to see some results. You're going to see something small or something big. And once you see results, I promise you that you're going to inspire yourself. And when you inspire yourself, you're going to motivate yourself to take action to see more results. So it comes full circle. And it has to start with inspiration. So where do you find that? You find that with your values. Like, who are you? What do you believe in? What are your triggers? For me, my values, determination, resourcefulness, loyalty. So when I meet people who share those same values, or when I see that from somebody else, like I get emotional. I'm not an emotional guy, and we connect with those. I connect with those values in somebody else. We become best friends, and I'm like, man, teach me, show me, let's hang out together, because I like what I'm seeing in you. Whether male or female doesn't matter, and that's where you can find that inspiration. Either understanding that about yourself or seeing that in other people. And your values are based on, what you were born with, your experiences in life, and they change from time to time. But if you can really know yourself, as Sun Tzu said, you're going to win every battle. Well, and know the enemy, you're going to win every battle.
Well, Jason, this has been the kick in the head that every attorney listening needed today. I'm already inspired, but I like people to take action. So you've got Deliberate Discomfort, your book, you've got your challenge, and also Warrior Rising. What are ways that people that are listening today that just can't, they can't wait another couple of weeks for a part 2 and they want to get involved with what you do in your own passion projects?
Thank you for that. Here's what we do. Warrior Rising is an unbelievable nonprofit, 501c3. Jakob and I are a part of that. And we ask people to give of their time, their talent, or their treasure, one of those 3 things. So treasure, you can donate, you can come to a fundraiser. That would be fantastic. Talent, if you feel that you can be a coach for us or a mentor for us, we'd love to have you do that, help our veterans in business or in life. And time, if you want to volunteer for us and help out in a number of different ways, you can do that as well. And so you can find us on warriorrising.org, O-R-G. We have all of our information on there. We even have a shop, a store that you can buy really cool Warrior Rising apparel. Our next event is going to be on September 10th in San Antonio, Texas. It's a business shower. It's our signature event. And we give the veterans everything they could possibly need to succeed in business. Custom business suits, laptop computers, websites, headshots, marketing videos. Everybody gets a grant. Everybody gets money. And it's going to be amazing. Our next one is November 11th, Veterans Day in Salt Lake City. You'll see Jakob and I at both events. So hopefully at the San Antonio event for Jakob, but definitely at the Salt Lake City event. And then if you want to help out with Mission 60, go to Amazon or wherever books are sold. You can pick up a copy of Deliberate Discomfort. I've got 499 reviews on Amazon. So one more review and we'll get to 500 and we'll bump the book up the list a little bit. But it's been reviewed. I think we're at 4.8 stars. So that's pretty good. And the Deliberate Discomfort Challenge is going to start again in 2023 on January 2nd. It's a 60-day challenge. Mentally, physically, spiritually, socially, emotionally, and professionally. We focus on those 6 areas. and it's very, very difficult. We've had 1,600 people go through it so far. And go to deliverdiscomfort.com or mission60.com for that. And I think that's it. So thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Jacob. Appreciate the time. Appreciate being on the show. Hopefully this was value added. And back to you, Courtney.
Jason talked about Warrior Rising, and it's important for me to say we're talking about mentorship and leadership and passion and all these things. And I just know that the trialers I know have some of that ability that they don't always get to show through their normal clients for different reasons. And I would love it to get more people involved with Warrior Rising. And yeah, of course, it could be a donation. It could just be a monthly pledge. It could be like, hey, I'm willing to give $300 a month, and we tell you where that money goes. But some of these guys might just need some legal help that your folks know.
Yeah.
It might be something your paralegals can do, and that's all okay. But the power is coming to see this stuff. And there's other opportunities that extend more than we could ever explain. But you come to one of these business showers, they might trigger something in your head that helps you help them make their idea better. It's the most interesting thing in the world when a different perspective looks at a lot of hard work someone else has done. And Jason's done it, and I feel like I've done it a little bit, but you can help these people tweak it a little bit. And we love to have people that haven't been around the community come in. This is absolutely not all military people. Warrior Rising will also help the spouse of a veteran or the family members of a veteran. And these people, and I can't wait till we see it. They just might have the next best invention that we've ever seen. And it's just so great to help with them. And sorry to jump in, Courtney, but it's something I care about. And Jason lives every single day. And there's a whole lot of people out there that could help us make it even better.
That's so true. Like, there's a lot of people listening. You're all smart and talented. Not as talented as Jason, but if you want to have a resume like his, take some action. Either head to Amazon, buy the book, join the challenge, or do one of the things that they both mentioned about helping out with Warrior Rising. And until next time on Settlement Nation, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you on our next episode. Bye for now.